Welcome. This is a brief presentation all about SEO. SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization. Now, this is a rather broad topic. Indeed, there are volumes written about this, but I'm going to try to give you the nuts and bolts of it in a few minutes. So, what is search engine optimization, or SEO? Well, according to Webipedia.com, I think this is a pretty good definition. SEO is a methodology of strategies, techniques, and tactics used to increase the amount of visitors to a website by obtaining a higher page rank in the search results returned by a search engine. So, in layman's terms, it's a way to get your page to show up higher in the Google search results. Now, for purposes of this presentation, I'm going to use the word Google synonymously with the term search engine. Of course, there are several search engines, Yahoo and Bing being two obvious alternative examples. But of course, for better or worse, Google is by far the most popular. And just as in days of old, the term copy was referred to as a Xerox, so too Google has become a verb. So when you use a search engine, you Google something. And therefore, I'm going to, for the sake of expediency and clarity, use the term Google synonymously with the term search engine. Well, let's talk about a brief history of the search engines. Back in the early 90s, these two fellows, Jerry Yang and David Philo, were two computer science students, and they decided that they were going to make a catalog of all of the websites that were available at that time on the World Wide Web, which was a few thousand at that time. So they went through them one by one, and they arranged them into a searchable index, searchable by simple text match, and they also arranged them into a hierarchical directory based on subject. And of course, their search engine, Jerry and David's Guide to the World Wide Web, we know better today as Yahoo. Then along came the two fellows on the right there, and that's Sergey Brin and Larry Page, and they said to themselves, hey, we got a better idea. Wouldn't it be great that instead of a directory, or even a searchable directory in which simple text matches would determine what pages showed up higher in the results returned, what if we could somehow give users the highest quality and most relative results? Well, that would really be something, wouldn't it? And bang, the search engine was born, and with it, their creation, which of course is Google. So what determines, that being the case, your page rank fast forward about 20 years? Well, number one, it's the quality of your page content, obviously. Number two, the structure of your page content. And by that I mean both the programmatic structure as well as the arrangement of the content. Also, the mobile friendliness of your page. It's important to keep in mind that in this day and age, a very large percentage, if not half, of all content from the World Wide Web is consumed on mobile devices. The quality of inbound links. How many other websites are pointing to yours or linking to your website? Not the quantity, but the quality of those links, and I'll elaborate on each of these a little bit in a moment. And of course, the duration of average visits to your website. Yes, Google knows how long a visitor is staying on your website before clicking away. This is sometimes referred to as the bounce rate. So let's talk about the quality of your content. Well, what is quality content as far as Google is concerned? Well, it has to be relevant to the subject matter at hand, of course. It has to be original. It shouldn't be copied from some other source. Google frowns on duplicate content. And by the way, I think now is a good time to point out that if you violate some of these rules, Google will punish you. It will move you down in the search results it returns. And of course, specificity. The more specific both your keywords and content is, the more likely that it will enjoy a higher page rank. So, for example, bananas. If my website is about bananas and my keyword is bananas, well, I'm going to have a lot of competition. But if my keyword is Dover, Delaware bananas, then I'm going to have a lot less competition, and I am probably, for that particular search phrase, going to enjoy a higher page rank, assuming, of course, the content of my website is relevant to that search phrase. Google also likes your page to be frequently updated. So that's why it's a good reason to have a blog or a news section. Google likes fresh content. And of course, Google wants your content to contain the keywords and phrases of the search in question, and that's something called a keyword density. What's a keyword density? It's a mathematical formula, and it's keyword occurrences divided by the total words in the body copy times 100. So Google considers the optimum keyword density, and this Google does not divulge this information, but this is the conventional wisdom out there in the wonderful world of SEO. The optimum keyword density is about 1 to 5%. As I mentioned just a moment ago, if you over optimize your website for search engines, Google will punish you. Google frowns on any attempt to use any type of underhanded means or covert means to influence the searches. Google's business model, it's important to remember, is to return the highest quality search results. So, long story short, if you have a keyword density of greater than 5%, Google is going to look askance at that, and it's going to think that you're trying to keyword stuff, and you may be subject to a penalty because of that. That's Google's business model in a nutshell. Long story short, if you go to Google and you do a search, or Bing or Yahoo or any of them, and you get quality results, you get relative pages with good content that is exactly what you're looking for, well, guess what? You're going to continue to use Google, and Google continues to make money off of that. If, however, you go to the search engine, to Google, and you get a bunch of irrelevant pages, well, you're going to move on to another search engine. So that's why it's important to Google to return the highest quality results and, in their words, provide the highest quality search experience. From their perspective, this is their golden rule. Build your web pages for people, not for search engines. Let's talk a little bit about structure. What is quality structure to a search engine? Well, of course, it has to be programmatically sound. If you have a bunch of coding errors, Google is going to frown on that. It's going to think that it's a low-quality site. After all, a low-quality site is not going to be concerned with the programmatic correctness of it, and conversely, a high-quality site is going to be presumably programmatically sound. You need to also properly place things like headings and captions, and these things need to be worded correctly and ideally be worded in such a way as to naturally contain your keywords and phrases that you want people to search for. You need keyword-rich hidden tags. That's a programmatic term or a programming term, but when you look at an image, for example, on a web page or a link, there's some programming code that is underlying to that image or link, and that programming code should contain hidden tags, the purpose of which is if for some reason, for example, the image is unable to display in the browser, the hidden tag will display. Well, the hidden tag should contain your keywords, and it should be relevant to what that image is. And as I just mentioned, your links within your web page pointing to both external pages and pages within your website should be properly formatted. And let's take a look at a simplistic example of that. So this, the top one would be an example of a poorly formatted link. Now this is some basic HTML programming, but when you look at a link, this is the programming code that is behind it. So you can see in the first example, click here. which would be highlighted and underlined on your web page. The programming tag says go to bananas.html, a page named bananas.html. It doesn't tell you anything other than that, and it just says click here. Well, that's not particularly useful when Google crawls your site. And that's an interesting term too, by the way. Google crawls your site with a robot called the Google bot. And the Google bot goes around periodically to all the websites on the internet, and it catalogs their content. And it uses things like the programming code and the tags associated with the programming code to correctly catalog and retrieve information based on the subject of that page. So back to what I was saying, just go to bananas.html when you click on the words click here doesn't really tell the Google bot anything. However, the second link, when you go to bananas.html, we have a title attribute there, which indicates what the page that it's referencing is about. But more important than that, you can see the anchor text, which is the text that is actually clickable, actually tells you what the next page, bananas.html, is all about. It's about learning all about bananas. The Google bot will catalog that and keep that in mind whenever somebody searches for bananas. Now again, this is a rather simplistic example, but this is the kind of thing that you have to pay attention to when optimizing your website, both programmatically and in its content for search engines. Okay, let's talk about mobile friendliness for a minute. Now, this is the year 2016, almost 2017. A year and a half ago, Google had this press release. Starting April 21st, 2015, we will be expanding our use of mobile friendliness as a ranking signal. This change will affect mobile searches in all languages worldwide and will have a significant impact in our search results. Consequently, users will find it easier to get relevant, high-quality search results that are optimized for their devices. Long story short, if your website is optimized to be mobile friendly, all other things being equal, you will have a higher page rank than a website that is not mobile friendly. Okay, this one is the big kahuna, inbound links. What makes this one a bit different from the other concerns is everything else you more or less have direct control over as the webmaster of your own website. However, you can't really control who and how many people are linking to your site. Google has developed a formula, and it's continually changing its formula, sometimes referred to as its algorithm, as to how it judges which sites or which links pointing to your site are of a higher quality, and consequently how that affects its judgment of your website's overall quality. In the old days, we used to trade links with each other, small businesses. Hey, I'll give you a link on my links page if you give me a link on your links page. That doesn't do you any good in this day and age. Google also it wants your the links pointing to your website to be of a relevant subject matter. So, for example, if I have a web page about banana recipes and a banana farm in the South Seas who's trying to sell bananas says, hey, here's a page in Dover, Delaware about banana recipes. I'm going to put a link on my page pointing to that page. That's going to have an SEO benefit to you because, of course, a banana farm is relevant to banana recipes. However, if a plumbing supply company in Walla Walla, Washington decides to trade links with my banana recipe website, well, that's not going to do me a lot of good and practically no good because the subject matter is completely unrelated. So it should be from a relevant source, the inbound link, the link from the other website that points to your website. Also, it should be from a popular source. All other things being equal, if the website that has a link pointing to your website gets 100,000 hits a day, that's going to do you a lot more good than a website that gets maybe 10 hits a month. And then finally, Um, Google wants the inbound links pointing to your website to be in an organic context. Now, we already talked about how a links page does you no good. Google has wised up to that. Um, but it wants it to also not be just a list of links at the bottom of your page that are there clearly simply for SEO purposes. It wants the link to be in the body copy of the content of the referring page. So, for example, our banana plantation in the South Seas may have anchor text in their link that says, "Click here to find out about banana recipes in Dover, Delaware," and blah blah blah. Yada 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 within the body copy of that web page's content. Google frowns upon paid links. Now, of course, they have no way of knowing with 100% accuracy whether a link is a paid link or not a paid link. But if it is a paid link, Google wants the programmer to put what's called a no-follow tag within that link. Because they don't want people to use paid links simply for SEO purposes. And if they suspect you're doing that, again, you can get penalized. Okay, so how can you cultivate quality inbound links? How can you get people to link to your website and in so doing enjoy an SEO benefit? Well, the first thing you can do, obviously, is offer quality content, and we've just gone over that. You can partake in value-added marketing is the kind of the buzzword they use today. In other words, give freebies away. A good example of that would be, and this is a little passé at this point, I realize, but just for the sake of example, if you're a realtor or a mortgage company and you have a little mortgage calculator on your website, well, people are going to link to your page simply to use that calculator. So providing free stuff like that within your website will motivate people to link to you, and you will get an SEO benefit from that. Obviously, you can do press releases to your local media, and volumes have been written about social media marketing, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, LinkedIn, etc., etc. All of that stuff will give you an SEO benefit. Things like Yelp as well. Which is, I guess, a social media outlet of sorts. If you can get listed in there, you will see an SEO benefit from that. And of course, you can ask other webmasters directly. Hey, here's my website. You think you could give me a link and write a little bit about me? And if you do that, maybe I'll write a little bit about you and put your link in my website. So it never hurts to ask, and you'd be surprised at how many other webmasters would be receptive to that. Okay, that's all well and good, but what else can you do? I mean, after all, this is the real world. Well, there's something called Google Adwords, and I guess what I should have written there actually was pay per click. Google Adwords is what's called a pay per click program. You can pay Google directly for clicks. Now, when you do a Google search, you'll notice that oftentimes there's a column of additional search results to the right of the what's called the natural search results. That right-hand column of search results, those are all paid ads. And the way that works, long story short, is you bid on certain keywords, and depending upon how competitive your keyword or key phrase is, Google may charge you $1, $2, $5, $10 per click every time that your ad is returned as the result of a search and the user clicks on your ad. Generally speaking, the search engines that have pay-per-click programs, they don't charge for impressions, meaning that if a search is executed and your listing shows up in the paid pay-per-click ads, if the user does not click on it, then you won't be charged. You're only charged when they actually click. Generally speaking, for local businesses, it's a pretty effective and cost-effective way to generate some interest in your website. So you should look at it if you haven't done that. For local businesses too, it's critical to get into Google Maps. And I wrote list local here. I think it's called Google Places. Had a bit of a brain freeze there. But whatever it is, list local or Google Places, you need to get registered in there. That's absolutely free. Just put your geographic location in Google Maps, and you will notice almost an instantaneous SEO benefit from that. Your site will start coming up higher simply by doing that. And do the same thing for Yahoo and Bing and the others. I also recommend to my customers that they spend about $80 or so, which is I think what the subscription rate currently is, for a ubl.org listing. UBL stands for Universal Business Listing. And if you do that, they'll put you in a bunch of other little directories and local search engines that Google apparently assigns a fair amount of importance to. And if you do that, you will in very short order see an SEO benefit. And you can find out more about that on ubl.org. Again, I highly recommend you do that if you haven't done it already. Finally, there are commercial link building services. You pay somebody to get you listed in a bunch of other websites and place your link in the content of a bunch of other websites, and they will do it. Typically, it's rather expensive, but what is it worth to be on the to come up number one in Google when somebody searches for your business or organization? Is it worth $10,000-$12,000, which is typically what it costs for large SEO firms to do that for you? I would say it probably is, considering the business it's going to generate. Now, as I mentioned before, Google tends to frown on paid links. So the way these link building services typically work is they have a network of webmasters that will place your link within the organic context of their blogs or news articles, and in that way it is not obvious that is a paid link, and you'll start to see some SEO benefit from that. Typically, you can get this for as little as $400 a month. It will typically take you about 3 months at least before you start to see a benefit from it, though. So you have to be patient. But the reviews I've read and generally the buzz out there is that these things typically work if you get the right one and you're willing to pay. Okay, let's talk about the final thing, which is the duration of user visits. Google's presumption is that if a user goes to your website and stays on that page longer than the user stays on another page, all other things being equal, your page must have superior content. If you use Google Analytics, which has become really the standard way of looking at traffic statistics now, it's a free service that Google provides, you'll see that Google knows how long users have stayed on your pages. And again, their presumption is that if a user stays on your page for a longer period of time, that page must be high quality. And to quote Jerry Seinfeld, of course, there is no such thing as an attention span. There is only the quality of what you are viewing. And that's pretty much Google's take on that. Okay, so what can you do to keep visitors on your page for longer periods of time then? Well, the obvious answer is you can include video. You can make videos and host them on YouTube and embed them along with your text content. Because remember that Google and the Google bot cannot read and catalog the content of your video. The Google bot is not going to sit there and watch your video. The Google bot can only read and catalog text content. So it's important to keep in mind that if you employ video, that you use it as a supplement to well-crafted and properly formatted text content and not as a substitute for it. And by the way, it's important to remember as well that if you don't have a YouTube channel, you really should. Why? YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world after Google. A lot of people don't realize that, but it is. More people spend time on YouTube, or almost as many people search for things on YouTube as they do on Google. So it's very important that you have a YouTube channel, irrespective of any of this. But video is a great way to keep people on your page, quality video, of course, for longer periods of time. What else can you do? Well, you can use a more graphical layout. If you just use a conventional layout, heading, paragraph, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, people are going to skim that like a speed reader and then click away. Again, that's called your bounce rate, how long people stay on your page before clicking away. And being bounced means, they get to your page, they glance at it, and they bounce away. They click away. So you want to keep people on your page by using a more compelling graphical layout. You kind of lead their eye around a little bit and get a little bit creative with it and make it a little bit more interesting, and that'll keep people on your page a little bit longer. What else can you do? Well, you can format your content in an interactive manner. So, for example, instead of having your content just formatted conventionally, you can have a series of clickable slides. Again, all on the same page, not clicking to a different page, but, what if I told you this? Click next. Now, what if I told you that? Click next. Now, what if I told you the other thing? Click next. So organizing and formatting and presenting your content in that sort of an interactive manner will keep visitors on your page longer. And again, the consequence of that will be that Google will presume your page is more interesting and therefore assign you a higher page rank. So, in summary, what's the secret of SEO? Well, properly arranged original content has to be legible on any device, has to have sound technical structure, good keyword placement, and keywords based on actual customer research. That's important. Some of the keywords that you might presume users or potential customers would use to find you aren't the actual keywords that they would use. So it's good to do a little bit of research there and find out. Even ask your customers and your patrons, hey, what would you search for if you were looking for me? Of course, you want to cultivate a network of links, and the best way to do that, rather than trying to play a cat and mouse game with Google and through some sort of covert means, buying links and placing links on other dubious websites, which again you can be penalized for, by building relationships and offering value on your site to get those permanent links there. That's the best way to do that. And of course, you need to have an engaging and interactive presentation, because when you do that, people are going to stay on your website longer, and Google is going to assume that your page is more worthwhile as a consequence. So in summary, provide a quality user experience. That's the name of the game. That's what Google wants. That's Google's business model. If they provide their users with quality results, then people are going to keep using Google. So if you provide your users with a quality experience, Google is going to recognize that, and you'll appear higher in the results returned by Google and the other search engines. Thank you very much for watching our presentation.